On tonight's M&A Sports Sit-Down, we talk with Rico Pickett, and he talks about the past, the present, and the future.
Basically, that's really what it was, man. And to this day, I can be a man and honestly say I regret it. I should have came back to Madden my senior year. I shouldn't have signed with an agent and did what I did. But at that time, I thought that was what's best for me and my family.
Hey fans of M&A, thanks for tuning in to another episode of M&A Sports Radio. And if you haven't already, please hit subscribe on your favorite podcast app.
While you're in there, leave us a rating, add a comment. We appreciate the feedback. Thank you for tuning in M&A Sports Radio. On tonight's M&A Sports Sit-Down, we welcome former Alabama and Manhattan point guard Rico Pickett to talk about the grind of becoming a professional basketball player and what it takes to play overseas. And without further ado, Rico, what's going on, man? Pumped to have you on.
I'm fine, man. Thank you guys for having me.
Of course, Pick. Of course, man. Happy to have you.
All right,
no problem. I'm glad to be on.
All righty. So let's start with right when you came out of high school here. Coming out of Decatur, you're the top player in the state of Alabama. You're a four-star recruit. And as an 18-year-old kid, that's a lot of pressure, and I'm sure it's got to be a point in your life where you have to read your own headlines a little bit. And looking back now, did you pay attention to that stuff a lot?
Yeah, I actually did. I paid attention to it too much. It got to a point to where it became a distraction, and I just kind of stayed on the internet and not really listen so much to what people were saying and reading the magazines, and I just had to stay focused. It was hard. I can't lie. At times it got to me, but I prevailed.
And you were playing for state championships. You won at least one state championship at Decatur, didn't you?
Nah, I lost in the championship.
Oh, wow. Tough. My bad for bringing that up. No, but I'm saying I remember.
Tough, man. And I still blame myself for it. I missed too many free throws that game. As a leader, I put that on myself. But, yeah, we lost in the championship game my senior year.
That's all right. Well, you went to Alabama out of high school. What were the other colleges that were looking for you in the recruiting process?
Michigan State, NC State, Arizona, Florida State, Tennessee, a bunch of random schools, but my closest one outside Alabama that I really wanted to go to at that period of time coming out of high school was probably Illinois.
Okay.
Illinois, yeah.
That's interesting. That's really interesting to hear you say that because clearly you end up at Alabama, and after a year, we've talked about in the past, things don't work out, and you end up at Miami-Dade. When you got there, was it kind of like, what's the thought process to that? Because it's got to be kind of you're in between. What's your next step going to be? So I'm interested to see what you were thinking at that time.
Right. It was at that time. It was, man. My mindset then was just like, okay, what am I exactly doing right now? I go from one of the top schools in the SEC to a junior college. So to me, it was kind of like night and day. I wasn't used to some of the have-nots that, you know what I'm saying, that you're used to having in Division I. So that part was tough. It was more so tough. It was tougher off the court than it was on the court. So the adjustment as far as the playing and the talent level and all of that was fine. That was the easy part. But it was just adjusting to life without having the same perks that you used to have.
How special was that team at Miami-Dade? You look at guys like Will Coleman, who goes to Memphis, Darnell Dodson, who goes to Kentucky. A lot of good players on that Dade team. You win a ton of games. What was that like down there?
To be honest, that was the best team I ever played on. Just like hands down, top to bottom. 10 Division I players, 10 fine Division I players off of 1 year. We had a hell of a coach. He was young. You had to deal with a lot of egos, a lot of big time talent in there. But that was the best team I ever played on, man. It was kind of like practice is harder than the games, and the games is like playing in an All-Star game. Until we played Chipotle.
No, for real.
Until we were able to Chipotle, yeah. But that was actually one of my best years, man, as far as basketball. And then I grew a lot too, as far as maturity wise. I grew a lot.
Oh, definitely. You get away from home, and you have a big year, and like you mentioned, on and off the court, and then another year goes on. Before you end up at Manhattan, all the big schools are coming at you again, UConn, Florida. At this point, I kind of mentioned it before. What goes into this decision again? Because
a second decision to go to another D1 school.
To go back at this point, you're thinking, all right, I got to make another decision again. What ultimately led you to Manhattan, and how did you turn down the big time programs? I'm sure the opportunity, it sounds corny in a way, but to be the man, that has to be a big draw when you end up at a school like Manhattan.
Oh, it was, and I got a lot of backlash and criticism off of it. And, I mean, it was a tough decision. it was difficult, but my whole thought process was it's not so much of where you go, is what you do while you're there.
Mm-hmm.
So small school, big school, it didn't really matter. Like, I love UConn, and I dreamed of always going to UConn ever since I was in Decatur, coming out of Decatur High School. But one thing led to another, and they lost a scholarship, and I couldn't go. So it was time to make a tough decision, a game-time decision. And when I met Coach Slice for the first time, Coach Barry Rawson, we clicked instantly. And it was kind of like he was so honest and genuine. I wasn't used to that at that time,
Okay.
as far as coming from a coaching standpoint. He didn't lie to me. He told me exactly what it was, how the team was, how the school was, how New York was. And I can't lie either, man. I fell in love with New York. It's kind of hard not to.
Exactly.
My first time coming to New York was my visit at Manhattan, and I fell in love. I didn't want to leave.
Was there a thought in your mind before you committed to Manhattan that maybe you could go pro, maybe overseas, or go to the D League, or do something without going back to a D1 program? Did you ever think about that way of trying to make it?
Yeah, I actually almost entered the NBA draft out of Miami-Dade. Me and I won't say their names, but a couple other players off their team. But it was a thought. It was a thought about going overseas. But overseas, to be honest, at that time in my mind, it was on the back burner. I was thinking NBA. So, yeah, it was a thought, but I knew I needed at least another year or two up under my belt just for credentials. Not more so my game, but it was just, for credentials more so. And then I knew you can't hurt getting a free education either. So that didn't hurt.
Absolutely.
Oh, definitely. A lot of respect for that. And for us, it was a perk for us. You end up at Manhattan, you have a very good year. You lead the MAC in scoring. You make a lot of highlight plays. And I think you know where I'm going with this. I kind of mentioned to you it before. The play against Siena and the reverse dunk where you stick your tongue out at Fran McCaffrey and the Siena bench.
That was my favorite moment.
No, it's funny. I wasn't even watching the game. My brother texted me because he was home in Albany actually, and he was like, "You should see what Rico Pickett just did." And it's one of those things where I have to ask you, when you did that, were you just like, "I'm doing this right now"?
Yeah, well, it was kind of like a spur of the moment, but you know what, man? And you guys know how bad we dislike Siena.
Oh, God.
I won't say it's a hell of a school, hell of a program, good coaches, good players, and we respected them. But I just feel like at that point in time, I actually thought we was going to win the game first.
Oh, yeah, you jumped out early.
I know. But then second off, I wanted to get some type of edge, any edge I could, over them because they was the big dogs of the match.
Yep.
So I figured if I could do that and get to them, maybe I could break their spirit a little bit, and it backfired.
You know what though? Anytime I see Fran, I think of that dunk, and I just think of him, and I just think you sticking your tongue out at that bench, and I just start laughing. I love that, man. That was so much. That was great.
He's doing a good job at Iowa now.
Fran, if you do hear this or you listening, I apologize. I didn't mean anything by it, man. Hell of a coach.
So after the year at Manhattan, and we're thinking you're going to come back another year, but then you make the decision to go pro and see if you can go overseas. And was it a decision? It was like you have to do it. What was your thought process of going pro after that year at Manhattan?
I was kind of torn, to be honest, after the season because I knew we had so much work left to be done with the team. We could have been a lot better. The next coming up year, we have better recruits, but to be honest, that matter was a personal matter. As far as like, at that time, she was my girlfriend at the time. She's my wife now. She was pregnant with our first child, and home life wasn't so good in Miami for her. So I had to make a decision whether I'm going to continue to go to school up here 1,000 miles away, or can I put food on the table right now to help out my home situation? And it was basically, that's really what it was, man. And to this day, I can be a man and honestly say I regret it. I should have came back to Madden my senior year. I shouldn't have signed with an agent and did what I did. But at that time, I thought that was what's best for me and my family.
You know what? And then you had Beeman, and I remember being in the gym in Dratty and just seeing you and Beeman just working out every day, working on his jumper, working on your jumper. And I thought, we might have a hell of a team if we get picked back next year. And that was my thought process too. I was like, and I remember you leaving and you having that conversation with me and Moose saying, you know what, I got to do what I got to do. And it was a personal matter. And I was like, hey, I got to tip my cap. That's what you got to do,
Yeah. And I love Manhattan, man. And you guys too, man, every day. Like,
hooray, baby.
No lie, man. I catch myself at least 3 or 4 times a week just reminiscing about just being in the dorms and having fun with you guys and just, just meeting y'all, just knowing y'all, period, man.
No,
I really appreciate everything because, y'all guys did some stuff back then for me that nobody knew about,
Oh, hell yeah.
that nobody knew about. So I just wanted to send my appreciation out to you guys, both of y'all, AJ and Mike.
Thanks, man.
Lindy, everybody.
Oh, yeah.
Appreciate
They'll
it.
be listening to this.
Yeah, and everyone knows. We made them aware. Ultimately, you end up going overseas. When you look back at it, what was your first stop, and what are your stops along the way throughout your professional career?
My first stop out of Manhattan was actually in Russia, and I stayed there for about a month or two, and I just didn't like it, just being honest. So I came back home. I ended up staying at home for a few months, went to the D-League, and the same situation that happened in Manhattan as far as my wife and the home situation kind of happened again when I had got drafted into the D-League. So I made another lifetime decision and decided to step away from the game again and try to come back and help my family. So I went there. I came back from the D-League. I didn't play a game. I went to training camp. Left. Long story short, I went to Lithuania like 2 or 3 months after that. Stayed for 5 or 6 months, played the season, averaged about 15 points. And then I went to the Dominican Republic. I went to France. I went to, where else was I in? Slovenia. I've been a couple places, man, but here lately, I took off some time again to make sure my home life is straight. And now, being 26 years old, I'm ready to get back in the game, devote the game back my whole life, ball is life, do whatever it is I got to do to get my foot back in the door, man.
So obviously your goal is the NBA, and we know that you had a tryout with the Heat last year. So what do people know about, like, what's the difference, would you say, between the international ball and the ball overseas and the ball here in the States? What would you see as your big difference?
Overseas ball is fundamentals first. Fundamentals first, and I don't care if he's 7'10", everybody over there can shoot. Don't matter how tall he is, what he looked like, what he came from. Everybody can shoot over there in fundamentals. Here, we really caught up on the big play. That's the difference between those guys over there is just trying to win. However they can get it done, they're going to get it done. Don't get me wrong. This is where the best basketball is being played.
Absolutely.
But it's just different. It's different. It's more pick and roll over here. More, you know what I'm saying, spaced out. The NBA game is faster. You have more talent, better athletes versus overseas. Overseas pro is not as many athletes as it is over here because there's only two American players allowed on each team. That's something that a lot of people don't know either.
That's a good rule then.
No, Dad, you definitely just taught the listeners something because I didn't know that, and I watch a ton of basketball. You know how we are with sports, and I did not know that that's a rule.
Right, and it's usually a center and a guard, always.
Okay.
A big man and a guard, always, and they never really play at the same time. So,
wow.
Yeah, man. Man, it's a lot of stuff that's going over there that people just not really. You wouldn't know if you went into it. You wouldn't
exactly.
know.
For
so
sure.
I can understand it.
Rico,
Go ahead.
I want to talk about one thing. We see a lot of these international guys making their way over into the league now, and I'm interested to see, like, you see a guy like Kristaps Porzingis last year. He gets drafted, and we see the backlash, and you see the guy Dragon Bender's coming out this year. When you look at a guy like Porzingis and you see a guy like Bender, who they're putting a lot of hype behind, I guess what I'm trying to say is what's like, and then you see they all look like Darko at the same time. The build's similar. What's the degree?
Right.
What's the degree of separation between one guy like Porzingis being who he is and Darko? Is it just a matter of wanting it?
It's a matter. Yeah. At the end of the day, that's what it comes down to. Because to be honest, Darko, however you pronounce his name, had just as much talent as Porzingis. Honestly, he had just as much upside. It seemed like Porzingis was more hungrier. He's tired of hearing the backlash of, here's another international player that we wasted a pick on. So I guess he just got fed up and he just putting in the work every day. To me, he's like our Knicks Dirk. He would be our Knicks Dirk.
Okay, I can see that.
Yeah. So that's the difference. Like, all of these overseas players don't really pan out, but to be honest, look at us too. In the past couple of years, college has dropped off a lot, man.
Oh, shit. Especially with the one and done, the way offense is played, it's horrific. Guys pass the ball around the perimeter for 25 or 30 seconds, and they're fogging up a shot. It's ridiculous.
And that's what I'm saying. And then you go to the NBA after 1 year in the D League, you play in the D League for half a year, then we don't hear about you ever again. And there's no disrespect, but that's just what's been going on for like the past 5 or 6 years.
Oh, yeah,
so
100%.
I'm really, and I don't mean to go off topic, but I'm rooting for the NBA to bump up this age limit and at least put another year in college or something like that, man. Because the game it's getting bad, man.
Oh, for
it's
sure.
It's getting bad. Yeah, but I do appreciate you guys, though, man. I really do. If y'all got any more questions, shoot, man.
Oh, you're not done yet. We're not done with you yet, for sure. We got a couple more for you.
Yeah, I'm here.
All righty. So, you talk about the age limit for the NBA. I'm interested to see what you think about this. I think you should be able to go right out of high school, right out of the chute. I get that. But if you come into college, you have to stay 2 years, because I think that's the only way you can draw a fair line, because then at the same time, people are going to argue you're kind of hampering these kids, because that's the argument now. What do you think about doing that?
That actually sounds perfect to me, man. If you do into college, you got to stay for 2 years. If you go out of high school, but I still feel like it should be still some type of stipulation to coming out of high school.
I agree. Because
Yeah,
sometimes
like,
they're either ready or they're not ready out of high school. It's either like that. It's either one extreme or the other. And if you go play the 2 years in college, not only does that help the college game, but it helps your own game by playing 2 years of very good basketball at the Division I level.
True, and you can only go up from there if you're really working on your craft like you're supposed to be doing. Like, there's only been certain players, man. Like I say, Ben Simmons could have came out without going to college. I give him that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's the best overall all around player in college.
Mm-hmm.
He's to me, he's not a LeBron James or Kevin Durant or, you know what I'm saying, or Carmelo Anthony, anything like that. But I feel like he could have came out of high school. Would he have did anything? I don't know. But his game, he has an NBA game. There's certain players, but it's just, I don't know, man. I don't know what's going on. It's like one and done is like the thing to do now, and it's hurting the game. It's hurting the overall game, period. Not just college, NBA too, man. So, I mean, I don't know. Hopefully they can change something and get it back to where it used to be or kind of headed towards in that direction.
Rico, before we let you go here, I got one final question for you. Who's the best player you played with internationally or in college overall? Who's the best you've ever seen?
The best I ever played with, the best I ever seen. Who is close? I would say the best player that I ever played with personally is Darnell Dotson, that played on my team from Miami-Dade that went to Kentucky.
Mm-hmm.
And the best player that I played against would have to be O.J. Mayo at the ABCD count my 11th grade year. Has to be. To this day. Never played anybody. A man amongst boys. NBA ready. Either him or Derrick Rose. It's hard. But I had to give it to O.J. Mayo, though. I had to give it to O.J.
I heard about O.J. in high school, and they said he was on another level, and it just seems like, I think at the NBA level, his game just hasn't worked out for some reason. I don't know if it's a work ethic thing, but I've always heard legendary stories about him, man. That's funny you say that.
His final play in high school, he dunks the ball off the backboard, throws up the fight on to the crowd in the student section, and punts the ball. It gets ejected. Yeah. That was his final play in high school. Like, that's legendary.
It was one of the most beautiful plays I've ever seen, Nicolette. I promise. When I see him throw it off the backboard and dunk it in third eye, that just brought back so many memories.
How great was that?
That made me think about the Sienna game, but we won't get back on to this, man. I really do, man. I appreciate it. And anytime y'all need me or, want to reach out or whatever, man, I'm here, man. This is my number, so I appreciate you guys.
Oh, definitely. Rico, thank you so much for coming on. Appreciate it. And when SEC Hoops comes around, I'd like to have you come on and talk about your thoughts about Kentucky and the rest of the SEC.
Please do, man. And keep up the good work, you guys, too, man. I see y'all.
Thanks, Pick. Appreciate it, man.
See you, man.
All right, bro.